Well, I did say we're continuing our conversation around democracy, and Mr. Osita Chidoka joins us now. He's a former Minister of Aviation and also a former Corps-Marshal of the FRSC. It's good to see you in our studios.
Thank you very much, Mobe.
I do not know if you want to quickly intervene on what you saw yesterday, what transpired in the Senate Committee hearing on ethics and privileges, and if you think that there's a nexus between that and democracy.
I am... Sadly, I didn't watch it because yesterday we were at the event for Professor Humphrey Nwosu yesterday, the memorial. But I've seen snippets of it. But it leads me to a fundamental issue that I raised with the behavior of the National Assembly. And that fundamental issue is, why does the National Assembly not have respect for its own institution? Why is the rules of the National Assembly subject to the vagaries of the decision of the executive or pleasing the people in power? Why is the National Assembly not the place for the representatives of the people to speak for the people? So, and I think that there are we can attest to some of the problems. When a law requires you to behave in a certain way and you think you can override it due to your personal interest, it means that the National Assembly itself does not have respect for its own institution and its own rules. So when you have an ethics committee and the senator talking down on people who came to the National Assembly to speak to them, I expect the National Assembly to be a welcoming place, to be the home for Nigerians, that the closest access we have to government, you may not be able to see the president or the executive, but we here in the National Assembly, we are your representatives. So even if you abuse us, we listen carefully and we said, you know, welcome, this is not the correct point of view, but I'm happy you have said this to us. I expect the National Assembly to be the place where the common man can walk into any day and say, my senator, my congressman, my House of Rep member, my State House of Assembly member, these are the issues in my constituency, and I would like you to make it important in the state. So the fact that there could be that type of altercation, because that's the part I saw. I saw the part of the altercation. I don't know what led to it. Just tells me that the National Assembly does not have respect for its own institution, or maybe does not clearly understand its role in a democracy. And that is very sad, very disappointing. I hope they will make amends.
You think, I mean, because someone would say you're talking about the National Assembly in general, but that was an altercation, you know, that was the reaction of one member of the Senate institution.
I'm taking it as a reflection of the attitude of the institution. If, as a new member of the National Assembly, he had come into the tradition of the behavior in the National Assembly, then he wouldn't have behaved that way. No matter the provocation, he will have kept his calm if he was provoked. But why I made it a National Assembly issue is that if you say the law says you should get two-thirds majority to do something, and you do it by voice vote, it means that fundamentally the people in National Assembly don't believe in their rules.
Mm. Well, you and I were at an event very recently honoring Right Honorable Ihedioha
yes.
At his 60th birthday, and there was a colloquium, you know, asking the vital question, is democracy failing in Africa? Interestingly, there were members, there was a panel right there, and questions to them, you know, immediately circled around a yes or no. Do you think democracy is failing across Africa? Mm. I'm asking you that now.
Yes, I heard you. Is democracy failing in Africa? You see, I like the theme of that conference, but I also have a worry about not defining concepts very well.
You think democracy needs to be defined?
Yes, we need to understand, what do we mean by democracy? A democracy where elections don't matter, the people don't participate in selecting their leaders, cannot be called a democracy, representative democracy. Because representative democracy, first of all, takes into consideration or takes for granted that the people were elected by the people. So there were many elections in Africa last year that nobody went to court about. Ghana was an example. South Africa,
Senegal
ANC lost. Senegal, people had elections. So At the root of elections in Nigeria, in Africa, is the fact that there are, at the root of democracy is free and fair elections. So Nigeria, I'm sorry to say, may not qualify to be a representative democracy as it is today. So if you then say, is democracy failing? The countries where democracy is being practiced properly, like South Africa, are the outcomes now commensurate with the feelings of people that democracy should support economic growth and all of that? Then we can have a conversation. If democracy is failing the aspirations of Africans. So, but in my view, and narrowing it to Nigeria, I think that the fundamental issue is that we first have to practice democracy. We first have to have clean elections. And the idea of clean elections is at the heart of democracy. So when we say that we have made the choices and the choices did not pan out well, we can then begin to think, maybe the presidential system is not working well for us. Maybe our National Assembly type is not working well for us. Maybe we need proportional representation as P2B canvassed. Maybe we need single term of presidency. Because I'm really at a worry that the two-term presidency and the cost of re-election in an environment where there is no transparency to government spending, where the government people will use the money they've acquired from government to be re-elected, is a waste of resources in Nigeria. Nigeria should not, by now we should have come to the conclusion, what does it cost to elect a governor? You multiply it by 36. Then you multiply it by the number, by the 4-year cycle. I will be of the view that we should have a 6-year single term to reduce the costs of even electoral process and to make sure that leaders focus on decisions. Because now, 2 years to 2027, governors are shifting their attention to campaign. So most of the decisions being taken now are not fundamentally decisions that would go well for Nigeria, but decisions that are designed to make you win an election.
I hear you when you talk about levels to this discussion. The fact that we first of all have to have free and fair elections, open elections, elections that everyone agrees produce the result that they all witnessed.
Correct.
But then the conversation then extends, because even to places where these results are clean and clear, people are wondering, is this how democratic leaders should act? The conversation did not, or will I say the question did not extend beyond or outside of Africa, but I do know that conversations are already ongoing outside of Africa as to whether or not, democracy is in peril in general.
Yes.
But let me quickly go to Ayo. I'm sure who also has questions for you.
Well, thank you, Malkwe. Well, it's been a while. One of the issues a good number of people have been asking, please allow me to deviate a little from the democracy conversation, because I know you are more of a governance person. Now, in terms of the issues that have occurred over the past few weeks and the attitude, the responses, the reactions that have been generated, issues in Rivers State, issues in the National Assembly, issues at the event that you co-hosted with my colleague, one question I just want to ask you. Number one, do you think governance is happening, be it at the federal or state levels, the way Nigerians anticipated? Or you think maybe there is a lot more politics than governance?
It appears to me that governance is not the major issue, because I couldn't understand the need to declare a state of emergency in Rivers State. Now, let me tell you why. 2024 was a terrible year for President Tinubu. It was the year when prices skyrocketed. The devaluation had happened in 23. The government did not have dollars to fund the foreign exchange markets. For most part of last year, they were battling with trying to get the economy back stable. Central Bank went ahead of, to curb inflation. They consistently raised interest rates. Those were, extreme measures taken to bring the economy back to a place where we can say it is stable. Now, we woke up in 2025. This is March 2025. The results are in. The inflation, food inflation had kind of tapered off. Food prices started coming down. March is what I would call one of the best months of the president. All the commercial papers that were put on sale in the last, say, 2 months were fully sold. The auctions of the TBs, you could see the amount of money people were spending to buy the treasury bills because interest rates were good. Foreign portfolio investments, even though it tapered off a little, you could see an increase in it. So the economy kind of began to stabilize. And for me, as a layman who is not an economist, I used to look at it from point of view of what is happening around me. So if you go to Ikoyi and Victoria Island and Banana Island, the number of cranes working there, for me, I haven't seen those number of cranes in a while in Nigeria. So the number of high-rise buildings rising up in Abuja, in Asokoro, in Maitama, the number of property being sold told me that people are beginning to restore confidence in the economy. Just when we were about to celebrate this milestone, when I was one of those who have always argued that, yes, it's difficult decisions, but the government need to take them. Just when they were about to celebrate it, the government introduced a new uncertainty into the economy. You handed over 1/36 of Nigeria to a retired army officer, to a non-democratic government. Now, I'll tell you, in 2015, when President Buhari did not appoint a cabinet for 6 months, one of my stock traders told me that the South Africans who had a major stake in some companies in Nigeria told him to sell all. And I said, why? They said a government that did not appoint a cabinet for 6 months will not have respect for that cabinet. This is a sign to them that this government will not be run in a collegiate system. So anybody that sees that that you can hand over Nigeria to a non-democratic person will then worry, how many more states will you do that to? What will you do when something tragic happens in the economy?
Well,
so I believe that this was not paying attention to economy.
Okay, just a quick one. Since you raised that issue, there are some people who have also argued that perhaps it's a kind of political chess movement by the president, because already the House had served the governor with an impeachment notice, and all of the issues there have not survived all political machinery and gimmicks out there. Perhaps it's the president trying to rescue the democratic institutions of Rivers State and insulating the state from all of the possible uproar that could happen should the governor be impeached. How do you respond to that? Do you agree with them?
No, I don't agree with them. They are missing a vital point. The vital point is that the president can declare a state of emergency without removing the democratic institutions. He acquires new powers to bring the military out of the streets in the state, to bring the police out on the streets in the state, to curb fundamental rights. He acquires new powers to get the National Assembly to make regulations for the state. So what is happening is that in the removal of the democratic governance in Rivers State, the president introduces a grave uncertainty to Nigeria that is not going to be clearly understood by investors and people outside of Nigeria. So I am of the view that the issue was not about not declaring state of emergency, but the consequential action of removing democratic institutions. I don't think that anybody in Nigeria will think that what was going on in Rivers State will have amounted to total breakdown of law and order if the president had taken over what I would call emergency powers, restored order, and put the State House of Assembly and the governor, on check and said, look, don't mess around with us here. But what he has done by removing the democratic institution is what I said has introduced a whole new dimension to the solid progress we are just about to begin to see.
In 30 seconds, do you see a role for the people? Because government is about the people.
The people in
this democracy,
yes.
Generally, do you see a role for them?
Yes, there's a huge role for them, but there is a certain level of cynicism that has entered into Nigeria that I think that everybody should be worried about. This cynicism is the type of cynicism that we saw in the 60s before we truncated our democracy. We saw it in the 80s before we truncated our democracy.
Can we get rid of it?
So, the way to get rid of it is what we're doing now. These conversations we're having, these discussions we're having. And the purpose of it is to continue to energize the public that what is going on what is required of Nigeria to make progress is much more than what we're seeing now. And that much more is that the people have to also participate in that process.
Mr. Chidoka, we have to thank you so much for coming on the program. Osita Chidoka is a former Minister of Aviation and also a former co-marshal of the FRSC. Thank you once more.